Okay, welcome back in Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. We are watching, by the way, we've been keeping an eye on these live images along with our sister station, Fox 5 in DC. Can't help but notice that we're starting to see a tow truck pull up to the scene. Fox 5 DC going back into their coverage right now. Let's watch them. They're live.
It as a possible act of international terrorism.
Yeah, given the targets, they are not 100% comfortable confirming the nationality of the shooter at this time. But this is a major development as we're following this shooting in D.C., that they are now investigating this as a possible act of international terrorism. We don't know much about the suspect at all, other than that he or she was injured and is in a local hospital. We'll keep you updated on that part of our coverage. But let's go back to Josh.
So I just want to mention one thing. We have been listening in to Fox 5 DC's coverage. They were just getting into some of the reporting indicating perhaps the suspect's nationality. Well, Brooke Taylor with Fox News has this. She says that law enforcement sources are telling her that the shooter who shot these Guard members in DC is an illegal migrant from Afghanistan who came in during Operation Allies Welcome under the Biden administration and overstayed that visa. We'll wait for more reporting to come out, but Fox News saying this is being probed as a possible terrorism investigation, and according to Brooke Taylor, an illegal migrant from Afghanistan who came in under the Biden administration and overstayed their visa, possibly responsible for this attack. They were just heading out to Josh Rosenthal in D.C. Let's get out to his live reporting.
Shootings took place. As I told you earlier, things do appear to us to be a little bit calmer now here tonight than they were earlier today, which is to be expected. There was a huge police presence out here earlier, right after this had occurred. Now, still a lot of law enforcement vehicles. We would expect that to continue throughout the night, but there are far fewer of them than we saw earlier. Also, far fewer people. Earlier, we saw a lot of folks who are just trying to get home from work, or we're coming down here to spend the night at a hotel, go to one of these restaurants. Now, things have become a little bit more quiet. However, guys, as I toss it to you, a reminder, this investigation is still very much ongoing tonight, and we do expect to hear more information, learn more information here in the coming hours and days.
I mean, this is an investigation that's going to be ongoing. We see these law enforcement officers out here canvassing the scene, looking for witnesses, looking for some surveillance videos as they kind of piece all of this together. A lot of moving parts on this shooting. Again, just blocks away from the White House. This act of violence, though, which Mayor Bowser called a targeted attack, unfolded as the presence of the national troops in the nation's capital and other cities around the country has been a hot-button issue for months.
Absolutely. 2,200 National Guard members have been in the district for months now. And tonight, we did get a chance to speak with former Undersecretary of Homeland Security, Jack DiMarcio, who gave us a little insight into the investigation and what this now means for the safety of troops across the country, as the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and President Trump saying they're going to add 500 more troops to D.C.
It certainly raises the force protection issue. One of the things that commanders are always concerned about, I'm a former Army colonel, is that you want to make sure you protect your force. So if something like this happened in the District of Columbia, the people that are in Charlotte, other parts of the country where guardsmen are now presently deployed, their force protection antenna just went up.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to speak with DiMarcio again tonight at 10 o'clock during our continued coverage of the tragedy. But again, as we are just now learning that this might be investigated as a possible international terrorism act, that is putting another level of importance to the story on a national level.
And just a reminder, we do not yet have any information about the identity of this suspected shooter, just that they were injured in the gunfire. They're at a local hospital, but name, age, nothing like that has been released at this point. Again, those two Guards members in critical condition. They're from West Virginia on this Thanksgiving Eve. We're going to take a quick break and be back with more with you.
Okay, Fox 5 DC, going to a commercial break. We're going to do the very same here. When we return, retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and host of the Strat Podcast, Hal Kempfer, going to be joining me. The top headline that him and I are going to be discussing is this. Brooke Taylor of Fox News saying law enforcement sources are telling her that the shooter in D.C. is an illegal migrant from Afghanistan who came in during Operation Allies Welcome under the Biden administration and overstayed that visa. Hal and I are going to be discussing this in a moment. Okay, let's continue tracking the latest. As I showed you, Brooke Taylor of Fox News saying sources are telling her, law enforcement sources telling her, that the shooter in D.C. is an illegal migrant from Afghanistan who came in during Operation Allies Welcome under the Biden administration and then overstayed that visa. This is some of the first details we're hearing about this suspect. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and host of the Strat podcast, Hal Kempfer, is here with me. Hal, when you hear some of Brooke's reporting, what can we glean from this at this hour?
Well, what we can glean from that is that when the White House and the president kind of indicated that it might be terrorism, this definitely has the hallmarks of terrorism. I mean, if he is, as it's reported, an Afghan national overstayed his visa, well, that kind of indicates that there was probably a political objective in what he was doing. It was definitely everything we've heard is that these two soldiers and National Guard soldiers in general were being deliberately targeted, and this, when you start connecting the dots, it's tough to escape that this was not, more likely than not, I should say, an act of terrorism. And now it's not big, it's not 9/11 style or scope, but it is still an act of terrorism, that what he did, and we'll find out more about his motives. You know, there could have been, you know, some mental illness issues, or could have been other things involved. That doesn't necessarily negate the that this was a terrorist act, but definitely this definitely ups the I should say the immigration enforcement challenge. We've seen some protests, we've seen some violent protests, but now what we're seeing is a direct targeting. You know, with deadly. Well, the intent certainly was deadly force, and so that changes the threat picture. That changes the risk that everyone involved, not just National Guard, but certainly everyone involved in federal law enforcement, dealing with immigration enforcement, is going to be looking at, and it'll probably change their security posture going forward.
So, Hal, Afghanistan. Again, very early, and time will tell what the precise motive is here. But when you hear Afghan national, what comes to mind about Afghanistan specifically?
Well, specifically, I'm sure, and this is what the FBI will be looking at very closely. Is there any affiliation with a known international terrorist group or movement? Al Qaeda obviously comes immediately to mind. ISIS is another case that comes immediately to mind. And we've seen a number of, certainly we saw 9/11, that was Al Qaeda, but we see a number of ISIS attacks, some not as big, some smaller in scope, a lot more what we call lone wolf type things where an individual or a couple of individuals go out and do stuff, and it could involve firearms. We've seen active shooting situations. Famously in San Bernardino about 10 years ago at a inland regional center out here, close, not too far from where I am. That's where there was a ISIS inspired, ISIS affiliated couple that went in and shot the place up. But we've also seen vehicle ramming attacks here in the U.S., overseas, that were clearly inspired by ISIS. And they're going to be looking at all of these connections. And they're obviously going to be asking the question of whether this was something that this person did of their own volition, or if this was something they were directed to do. So they'll be looking at all their social media. They'll be looking at all of their communications. They'll be looking at their laptop, any electronic digital device that they have to find out, is there any communication? Is this just right now? We see the one individual. We don't see any other co-conspirators, but they're going to want to track that down to find out, was there anything where somebody else knew about this? Then, of course, like with any attack, the question is this a one-off? Is this just this one person? Or is this just one aspect of a larger coordinated operation? Are they going to be looking at doing attacks in other cities? And will these attacks look the same, or will they be something different? And all of these are questions that the FBI is going to be dealing with. These are questions that the Department of Homeland Security is dealing with, and frankly, questions that the Department of War, Department of Defense is dealing with, because these are National Guard troops, albeit it is a little bit different in this situation because these West Virginia National Guard troops actually came under what's called EMAC. They weren't Title 10 federalized National Guard. They were actually under what's called Title 32, and that's a whole discussion about how they use that federal funding to do that. But basically, it's a West Virginia to Washington, D.C. Support, and it was done through the governor of West Virginia with the mayor of Washington, D.C., albeit the government of Washington, D.C. is actually under Congress, and the president, in many ways, actually fills the role of the governor since Washington, D.C. is a federal district. And that's actually one of the things the courts have been kind of grappling with, too, is the legal status of these National Guard troops from other states coming to Washington, D.C.
So let's again take a look at Brooke's tweet here. She says, came in during Operation Allies Welcome. Operation Allies Welcome, Hal. Can you expand on what Brooke is alluding to there?
Well, this is, we, as you recall, we pulled out of Afghanistan, and we brought a lot of Afghans back that have been working with us. So there's a lot of questions as to what was the reason why this individual was brought under Allied Welcome. What was the justification? They're going to be looking at that. They're going to be looking if there was a family situation where there are others involved. What was he doing? And my understanding is he is male. That what was he doing with us over there specifically? And they'll be asking all these questions. We may find out that it could be a lot of different things. Could be that he was possibly trained with the Afghan national government. Could have been a lot of different things that would indicate. And frankly, tragically, based on what we saw today, he does seem to know his way around a firearm. So we're going to find out more about what was going on there, and we may find out also what his status was, whether he was actively being sought by ICE. Were they trying to deport him back to Afghanistan? Was he fearful for his life that if he went back to Afghanistan that the Taliban would get hold of him and harm him or harm his family or something like that? We're going to find out all these things, and right now that's all a big unknown. That's all supposition. We just don't know much. We just have that one report, which is certainly interesting, certainly a revelation. But probably opens up more questions than it actually answers in many ways.
So, Hal, you and I have had countless conversations about the deployment of the National Guard to DC. In general, what are, and time will tell exactly what these troops were doing at the time of the attack. In general, though, what have these Guard members been tasked with doing while they've been in the nation's capital?
Well, it's interesting. In Washington, D.C., it's a little bit different than some of the other locations. They actually have been part of a crime deterrence program. So if this was, as it's kind of implied based on the status of this individual, something where he was striking out against immigration enforcement because of his immigration status, which is just, that's an inference. It may not be the case. But in Washington, D.C., they were actually out there patrolling as a deterrent to crime. And reports are that they had some success in doing that. And actually, some of the things they were doing were kind of it didn't need that. Probably that's the question that the federal judge had, was do you really need the National Guard to do this? But they were picking up trash, cleaning up the area, moving homeless people out of certain areas, basically making the city look more welcoming to visitors, and trying to create an atmosphere of safety and security throughout the city. And so that's what the National Guard's mission was. And outside the near the White House, which this was reported to be near the White House, I don't think they were actively engaged in any operations with ICE for immigration enforcement. Actually, I think they were there more of a military presence for safety and security. And what's kind of interesting is my understanding with the West Virginia National Guard, there was about 300 to 400 that were deployed, but during Thanksgiving, because it's a holiday, they were going to reduce their presence. And because West Virginia is very close to Washington, D.C., they were going to reduce their presence in the district down to about 160. So it is very likely that these two individuals that were shot were part of the 160 that were staying back. And it sounded like the 160 that were staying back in many cases, if not every case, but in many cases, that was a voluntary thing where they asked, would you be willing to stay back to help out? And one of the things that they were doing, or going to be doing on Thanksgiving, was actually serving meals, Thanksgiving dinners. So it's it's extremely tragic what's occurred here, but it is kind of strange that this appears to have been tied maybe to an immigration issue, but these particular troops were actually more likely than not involved. Were probably not involved, at least at the particular time of the shooting, not involved with anything tied to immigration.
So, time will tell whether or not this was politically motivated. These are facts that we simply just don't have that tonight. It's too early on in the investigation. But one thing that Fox 5 DC was underscoring in their coverage earlier today, these Guard members themselves are not politically motivated, Hal, correct? These are just service members carrying out what they signed up for, to basically serve. That's all these guys do when they're out doing these jobs, correct?
Absolutely. This has nothing, there's no politics with any of the military or with the Guard. They're simply, they signed up to serve their country. They're following orders, lawful orders, I should mention, because that seems to be a controversy right now. But they were simply doing their duty. And if the politics, and certainly there's a lot of politics right now with these domestic deployments, the federalized National Guard and other federal troops to cities. That's completely separate and apart from the troops that are actually doing the missions. The troops doing the missions are just doing their duty as they are assigned to do it. And if there's a federal troop guarding a federal installation or something like that, that goes back to the beginning of the Republic. That's kind of one of the things that troops do. And so there's nothing political in this, although certainly immigration enforcement, as it's being done now, is very controversial. We have seen violent protests. We have seen violence There's been at least one or more deaths involved with all this. So that's a separate issue, and sadly, this may be kind of connected to that other mission, which is, from what I can tell, not the mission that these particular soldiers were involved in.
I should say Bill Malugin just sending this out. He's Fox's, he's a congressional correspondent for Fox, but of course, many people know Bill for his years of reporting on the border and immigration issues for Fox. Malugin saying this moments ago: per multiple federal law enforcement sources, the suspect in custody for the shooting of 2 National Guard soldiers in D.C. is an Afghan national who entered the U.S. on September 8th, 2021, as part of the Biden administration's Operation Allies Welcome in the aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. I'm told that his permission to be in the U.S. expired in September of this year, and he is now in the country illegally. Malugin says, I have a name and date of birth, but am waiting for further confirmation. Hal, I'm not sure how much you'd be able to expand on this. I'm curious what you do know, though. In general, what may have Afghan nationals been leaving the country for in light of the U.S.'s withdrawal from Afghanistan? I mean, there were people who wanted to leave the country in light of the Taliban taking over. Do I have that right?
Well, many of them, if not most of them, at least of the adults, not the children, but they were involved with either the Afghan national government or directly supporting the U.S. And we tried to get out as many as we possibly could, despite the many that we unfortunately could not get out. We did get a lot of Afghans out of Afghanistan before the Taliban, as the Taliban were taking over. And of course, the reason they wanted to get out was because they were in fear for their lives, for themselves and their families, that the Taliban would seek retribution against them for having been working with the U.S. government against the Taliban, and certainly against any other violent extremist groups that were operating against the Afghan national government there, to include Al Qaeda and ISIS. And so I'm sure he was, that was probably his motivation for coming over here. And in September, when he was told that his time had expired, I have no doubt he was looking around the world and saying, where do I go? And going back to Afghanistan, that I don't think that really has changed much. It's still a tough place, still run by the Taliban. And what has changed, though, is a number of countries, particularly in Europe, have also tightened up their immigration rules. And so it's a lot tougher for some of these immigrants that were here as refugees under a special status to go to another country where they can avoid possible retribution by the Taliban or those that they were fleeing. And that's been it's an issue that certainly impacts Afghanistan, but we've also seen recently Haitian refugees were facing being repatriated back to Haiti, and they were very frustrated, angry, a little desperate to a certain degree that they were going back into a really horrible situation in Haiti. And there's a number of countries where the situation on the ground hasn't changed that much, but their time in the U.S. has run out because of the rules on refugee status and the way that their visas were set up when they came in.
As of this hour, the 2 National Guard troops are in critical condition. Certainly, Hal, 2 military families not going to be celebrating Thanksgiving the way they thought they would tonight, tomorrow. What are you tracking in the coming days? Where does this story go from here? And what are your major questions leading into the Thanksgiving holiday and into the weekend?
Well, certainly, I think for everyone, our hearts go out to the victims, their families, to those soldiers, and certainly their families and their the soldiers in their units and everybody else that are out there doing a very difficult mission. at this time. And of course, our wishes are that for a speedy, fast recovery, full recovery. And, but that's one of the things we'll be looking for this weekend and I will be looking for, is this a one-off event? Is this a single event, a lone wolf inspired who's self-motivated? Or is this connected to something else? Is there going to be some other sort of thing? And we just saw a thwarted ISIS plot in Michigan where they were going to do what they're basically a Halloween type of attack. The previous, well, one of the previous big holidays we had not that long ago. And so the concern would be, is there something that they were thinking about for Thanksgiving? And from a threat perspective, Thanksgiving is a quintessentially American holiday. It is rather unique. And so that would be my concern, is that there's something else that's out there being planned. And I would say that the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are looking at this very, very closely, along with others, to try and figure out if there is anything else out there that's being planned. Was this person connected to something more than just himself? They'll be trying to figure out all these things, and they got to do it very fast because Thanksgiving is tomorrow, and we just saw the attack today.
Hal Kemper is a retired Marine intelligence officer, national security analyst, and the host of the Strap podcast. Thanks, Hal.
All right. Thank you, Austin.
7:40 in the nation's capital. We continue to monitor these live vantage points of the scene. We'll keep you posted. Time for us to take a quick commercial break. Also worth mentioning, by the way, that we'll let you know. You notice that last sentence in Malujin's tweet. He says he has a name and a date of birth, waiting for further confirmation. We will let you know if Malujin sends out a follow-up, and if we do, in fact, get a name or a age for this potential suspect. Let's slide away for a moment. Our coverage continuing in 2 minutes. Okay, so let's listen in to the latest press conference from officials. We've really only gotten one on-camera update so far from officials, including DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, FBI Director Kash Patel, also in attendance. Let's play this out. This is the latest on what we're hearing from officials. They gave this press conference earlier in the afternoon.
We're here to brief you on the tragic events that happened today at approximately 2:15 local time in Washington, D.C., where two of our brave members of the National Guard and the Department of War were brazenly attacked in a horrendous act of violence. They were shot. They're in critical condition. As you can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. Since this is an assault on a federal law enforcement officer, this will be treated at the federal level as an assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The FBI will lead out on that mission with our interagency partners to include the Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service, ATF, DEA. And we're thankful for the mayor's assistance in this matter, the Metropolitan Police Department and their skills in investigating homicides and gun shootings in this city is exceptional. We will work together collaboratively because this is a matter of national security, because it's a matter of pride. President Trump has been informed. We've been in contact with the White House. We will shortchange the American public with no resources to make sure we find and safeguard our nation's capital right here in Washington, D.C., and bring anyone responsible for this heinous act of violence to justice. I would lastly like to add to the American public and the world, please send your prayers to those brave warriors who are in critical condition and their families. They are here serving our country. They are here protecting everyday Americans and citizens around the world in our nation's capital. They are the heroes of this day, and we must remember them on this day and every day and their families and the sacrifice they have made. I will now turn it over to Chief Carroll of the Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Carroll. I'm the Executive Assistant Chief here at the Metropolitan Police Department. At approximately 2:15 this afternoon, members of the DC National Guard were on high visibility patrols in the area of 17th and I Street Northwest when a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring him into custody. Within moments, members of law enforcement in the area were also able to assist and bring that individual into custody. At this time, as the director mentioned, the National Guard members are being treated at a local hospital. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene to provide first aid for those individuals and transport them to a local hospital. The suspect in this case was also transported for treatment at a local hospital. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C., and I, too, want to send my thoughts and prayers to the families of the guardsmen and to the guardsmen who are in critical condition in a local hospital. I am joined by members and leadership from the D.C. National Guard, from the West Virginia National Guard, United States Secret Service, Deputy Mayor Pia, Fire Chief Donnelly, and Metro's General Manager Randy Clark. And we join with the FBI Director in ensuring that MPD investigates, the U.S. Attorney prosecutes this case to the fullest extent of the law. I've had the opportunity to brief U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was speaking to the president when I called, as well as the United States Attorney Pirro, who assured me that this case will have her office's complete attention.
Mayor, was there any other suspect?
Chief?
Sure. So no, at this time, there's no indication that there was any other suspect. The one suspect that was involved in this incident, they were shot during the interaction and they were transported to the hospital for treatment.
Mayor, does this validate the need for the National Guard here in D.C.?
What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody.
Mayor, can you tell us any more details on the condition of the two National Guardsmen and whether or not anyone else was injured? And a quick question follow-up for the FBI Director. You said that we'll make sure we find the perpetrators for this act. So just to clarify, the person believed to be responsible is in custody and there are no other suspects.
Sure. So I can start out again, Chief Carroll from MPD. So both of the individuals, the guard members, they are in critical condition in a local hospital at this time being treated. At this point, we have no other suspects. We have reviewed video from the area. It appears, like I said, to be a lone gunman that raised a firearm and ambushed these members of the National Guard, and he was quickly taken into custody by other National Guard members and law enforcement members.
Any sense of motive?
No, at this time, obviously, we're very in the preliminary stages of investigation. There's a lot of things, a lot of agents that are here from various federal agencies, law enforcement agencies. We have the full power of the FBI and our federal partners here in the task force. So we're looking at all those different aspects, but we don't have any motive. The National Guardsmen that were shot, I'm told they were armed.
Did they get off shots?
At this time, that's part of the preliminary investigation.
Can you explain how the suspect was apprehended?
Chief.
Sure. So how the suspect was apprehended, as I said, the individual, the suspect came around the corner. He immediately started firing a firearm at the two National Guard members. So at that time, there were other National Guard members that were in the area. They heard the gunfire. They actually were able to intervene and to kind of hold down the suspect after he had been shot on the ground until law enforcement got there within moments.
And he was shot by a National Guard.
At this point, we're still investigating exactly who shot the individual. It's not clear at this time.
Were there DC policemen in the area?
We don't know what kind of weapon. There was DC police. It happened right in front of the Metro, although there is no indication that the perpetrator was on the Metro. So there's Metro Transit Police in the area. And obviously being on 17th Street by the White House, Uniform Division Secret Service were in the immediate area as well.
What kind of weapon the alleged perpetrator used?
We do not know at this time. It's still under investigation.
We're going to be able to take a couple more.
Have you been able to question the suspect, or is his condition so severe that you haven't been able to have a conversation?
Sure. And so as I said, we're very preliminary in the investigation, so we're looking to all aspects of who the individual is, his connections. At this time, he's still in the hospital receiving treatment.
And I would just like, hang on, I would just like to add, the reason that this suspect is in custody is because of the bravery of the men and women of the National Guard who responded due to their extensive training to secure American lives today. There was not any further injury and any further shootings. We should highlight the fact that the men and women of law enforcement, the interagency, the Department of War, and the National Guard executed their training with great precision today and prevented an even greater tragedy from befalling us. These National Guardsmen are heroes, and we must pray for their safety and their speedy recovery. And as the chief said, we are in the preliminary stages of this investigation. We will run down every single lead, every piece of evidence. This is the power of the U.S. government at its best at the state, local, and federal level. That is why this interagency group is standing behind us to assure America and the world that we will continue to keep D.C. safe. And thankfully, we have Metropolitan Police Department, the National Guardsmen, and federal agents, and the Department of Justice and Attorney General willing to prosecute the mission to keep Americans safe. And President Trump has rightly stated that this heinous act will be investigated, and he has thanked the National Guardsmen and women and the men and women of law enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did the suspect say anything at the time? Why did the West Virginia governor say that they Chief, was anyone else?
Kash Patel, Muriel Bowser, speaking at the one and only on-camera press conference we've gotten from officials directly relating to this shooting today. We did also hear from Secretary Pete Hegseth, the Department of War's rapid response account, sending this out. Let's play out his remark. He only spoke on this for a few minutes. I want to play this before we take our final break of the hour.
Productive meetings, but I want to start by saying after those meetings, myself and my team were notified that 2 National Guardsmen have been shot in Washington, D.C., critically wounded. The shooter shot in a cowardly, dastardly act targeting the best of America, heroes willing to serve in Washington, D.C., serve for people they don't know and they've never met, because they love their country and their capital and their community. They were willing to do dangerous things others were not, because they love their fellow Americans. Someone decided to turn that into targeting National Guardsmen. That will only stiffen our resolve. We will never back down. We will secure our capital. We will secure our cities. In fact, this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful. The drop in crime has been historic. The increase in safety and security has been historic. But if criminals want to conduct things like this, violence against America's best, we will never back down. President Trump will never back down. That's why the American people elected him. America and our warriors, our National Guardsmen, are strong. And so we're following this very closely. We're getting information rapidly. I mentioned the faith of this country, the Christian faith, the prayers. I would ask for prayers for our National Guardsmen.
Excuse me, Mr.
Appeals to heaven for our National Guardsmen, for their families, on bended knee as a War Department, as a nation.
Excuse me.
We will never back down.
Excuse me.
Think about them right now.
Venezuela.
We're doing a couple of great, productive meetings with the President and Minister of Defense here, where we are dedicated to the counter-cartel effort here. Criminality knows no boundaries, whether it's the United States of America and Washington, D.C., or it's the Caribbean and the Western Hemisphere. We are going to go after narco terrorists. It will not stand. Our borders will be secure, whether it's the Dominican Republic or the United States of America, and we look forward to working with our partners to make it happen. You know, President Trump believes in a clear principle: peace through strength. You get peace by being strong. And if you're a narco terrorist who wants to bring drugs to the United States of America, we will find you, we will fix you, and we will finish you, because we have all the rights in the world. We've got lots of attorneys and lots of intel analysts, and we know exactly who we're targeting and why. If you're involved in that conduct, we will kill you. It's that deadly serious because of the poison that has made its way into the American public for far too long. President Trump is serious about it. We're serious about it. And we're proud to be working with the Dominican Republic, another country very serious about ensuring that cartels don't set the agenda. We do. Thank you very much. It's been great.
Secretary Hegseth speaking earlier today. Again, we'll let you know if there's any more on-camera briefings as the night progresses. We aren't hearing of anything imminent tonight. Perhaps we will look to tomorrow or the next day for more on-camera updates from officials. But for now, this is what we have. These live vantage points of the scene. Let's hit our final break of the hour. Our coverage continuing in a moment. Okay, that'll do it for my time on the desk. I've been Austin Westfall. We will keep the continuing coverage going for the rest of the night. My colleague Jay Russell will be stepping up here in a moment. He'll be tracking the latest on this developing story in D.C. One thing I do want to point out, I know some of you have heard of how close this happened to the White House. This is the maps to give you an idea, to give you a visual. This thing was just about 2 blocks away from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The White House was on lockdown for a time. That lockdown has since lifted. President Trump not at the White House today. And very important to mention that the president is in southern Florida, Mar-a-Lago. He flew today, in fact. So he was not home at the time that this shooting happened. We did hear from him, though, President Trump saying on social media, if we can get a refresh of Chiron 4, everybody. I'm going to put up the president's social media statement here. The president on social media saying earlier today, as looks like it's dipping to black on us, looks like we're having some trouble pulling up the president's statement, but nonetheless, a live look at the White House on this tragic evening, really, in Washington, D.C., just about 2 blocks away from this very location. This grisly shooting taking place, what appeared to be a targeted shooting, according to D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. President Trump putting this on social media in reaction. He says, the animal that shot the 2 National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in 2 separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless, will pay a very steep price. God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people. I, as President of the United States, and everyone associated with the office of the presidency, am with you. Again, a live look at the White House, 8 o'clock on the nose in the nation's capital. We didn't hear from President Trump on camera today, but we did hear from Vice President J.D. Vance. He was in Kentucky speaking with troops. He began his remarks by giving a brief statement about this shooting in D.C. Let's play out the Vice President's comments. Again, he talks about D.C. up front, gives the rest of his remarks, his regularly scheduled remarks, if you will, after that. And then when J.D. Vance is done, Jay Russell will be up here with you. Let's listen in to VP Vance earlier today.
It is great to be here in beautiful Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and let me just say, I want to say first, before we get started, on a somber note, we had, and some of you may have seen this on your phones or on social media, but apparently there was a shooting outside the White House just a couple of hours ago. And we're still learning everything. We still don't know the motive. There's a lot that we haven't yet figured out. But what we do know is that a couple of National Guardsmen were injured in the line of duty. And first of all, I want everybody who's a person of faith to say a prayer for those 2 National Guardsmen, that they're able to spend Thanksgiving with their families instead of losing their lives, because I understand they're still in pretty tough condition. But I think it's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America. And as a person who goes into work every single day in that building and knows that there are a lot of people who wear the uniform of the United States Army, let me just say very personally, thank them for what they're doing. We're grateful to them, and we're praying that they're going to be safe and they're going to spend Thanksgiving with their families. God bless them. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the business of the Army and about what you're doing and about why it's important to the United States of America and why we are proud of you, every single one of our soldiers here in Fort Campbell and all across the world. We have got some incredible guests here to honor this moment, to honor you, to say thanks to so many of you for spending time away from your families here this day before Thanksgiving. And I want to give just a few shout outs to some of our special guests before we get started. First of all, to General Travis McIntosh and Command Sergeant Major Charles Walker, thank you guys for leading this incredible facility, and thank you for serving in the United States Army and making us proud. Where are you guys? Please stand up and be recognized. Thank you all. We've got my dear friend, Senator